NTEU, and I've got with me today Michael Evans and Helena Spiro from the National Office, who will be co-hosts of the meeting and running it for us, and Campbell Smith, who will be available to answer questions if you want to put questions into chat as we go. So I might just share my screen. Right, so we're talking about health and safety reps today. And before we do that, I need to, as we always do, acknowledge that we're meeting today on Aboriginal land, wherever we are, a land for which they have been the custodians for millennia. We also acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded, and the impact of that is still being felt by First Nations peoples today. So we pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And I note that I have the privilege of working and living on Wurundjeri land. So what the format today is that I'm going to dump a load of information on you about what a HSR is and what they do and how they do it. Cam will be available to answer questions as we go in the chat, as we said, and there'll be plenty of time for questions at the end as well. So there's a reason why this has come to prominence now. We know we're facing a crisis in health and safety on our campuses, both through COVID and mental health, and in the current really stressful environment of people being returned to campuses in the middle of a pandemic. We shouldn't also forget the mental health issues that occur right across our sector. So we're facing a crisis. And we know that many people are not currently represented by a health and safety representative, either because the positions are unfilled or the previous ones have expired. And that's largely because many university managements and other managements as well fail to pay appropriate attention to the health and safety system that they are supposed to be maintaining. So now's a really good time to learn and get involved. And we're here to answer any questions that you might have. Hopefully I'll answer quite a lot of them in this presentation. So if you were on last week, you would have heard me saying that health and safety reps have an important role. It's a key role. It's absolutely vital in maintaining healthy and safe workplaces. They are the link between the employees and management. They have enormous powers under the Work Health and Safety Acts, and of course are supported by NTEU. So we provide support to anybody who's acting in a health and safety role. And we talk about health and safety representatives having significant powers. So these, keywords in red are the significant powers. And when we say investigate health and safety issues, that means, yes, you can go and physically investigate a health and safety issue. You can investigate something that someone in your work group has brought to your attention. Or if we're talking about issues primarily around mental health, then you can investigate and demand records and documents from management in order to allow you to assess the health and safety risk. We recommend, if you're a health and safety rep, that you make it a practice of regularly doing what we call a safety walk, which is just walking around your designated work group and the accompanying areas, checking out whether there are any obvious health and safety issues, but also just having a chat to people and asking them if they've got any concerns. You're an important part of the decision making. You consult at both levels with the employees in your work group and with management. And actually just the fact of having a health and safety rep in place and one who is active tends to keep management honest about their activity and how the decisions they're making are impacting on staff. So they're all really important powers. Whoops, I went one too far there, I think. I did, but I remember what's on the other screen. So you also have the power to issue what's called a provisional improvement notice, or a PIN, P-I-N. And that is basically a legal notice from you to your employer that you believe that they are in breach of the Work Health and Safety Act, and that involves the regulator as well. So it's like if you're basically issuing them effectively a summons to say you're not filling your obligations, fix it, or it goes further than here. So that's a really important tool. You can only HSRs can issue PINs, and you have to have undergone the training before you're entitled to issue one. And in extreme circumstances, HSRs have the power to order that the employees cease work. So that's when there is an immediate and imminent health and safety risk to those workers. So a HSR can come in and order that work cease. My computer is going backwards. Okay. There we go. So you've got those powers, but there's no point having those powers if you're not protected. So there are three basic ways that you're protected: the Fair Work Act, the Work Health and Safety Act, and by your union support and assistance. So the first protection, I think, is probably one of the really important ones, is that those powers and responsibilities are enshrined in legislation, and the legislation makes clear that you're legally entitled to exercise them. The legislation also prevents the employer taking action against you because of anything that you do while you're acting as a HSR, provided you're acting in good faith, of course. And both NTEU and the workplace regulators will stand with members where there's any suggestion of action against a HSR. The workplace regulators take any suggestion of pressure on HSRs from management very seriously, because they know that there's such an important part in the work health and safety ecosystem of a workplace. Other protections is you're entitled to conduct your work health and safety responsibilities during work time. So if you're an academic staff member, that can be accommodated and should be accommodated in your workload model. A professional staff member, it might mean a reduction in work or a change in work assignments, but you are entitled to be able to conduct that work during work time. Another protection is if you're not feeling entirely confident, that at any stage the legislation allows you to ask any other person to help you with what you need to do. So the best solution from our point of view is get in touch with us. You can ask the union, you can formally ask the union to work with you, and then the union can work with you to help resolve the issue with the management. And finally, you get the protection of having received 5 days of training, which is really important. And remember, if you do become a HSR, that you do not need to accept training provided by your management. You can choose your training provider, and we strongly recommend that you undertake training that's either provided by us or one of the trades and labour councils in your various states, because they give you the sort of training that you need on the representation part of workers, as well as the technical training. So it's really important that you pick your training provider and don't just accept one that management sends you to. So you have powers and responsibilities, so do your employers. So when we're talking about work health and safety, it's important to remember, and when you're thinking about it, when you're walking around a campus or a work site, that the employer's responsibility applies to everybody who's in that location. So it's the workers, it's also the students, it's visitors, it's contractors, it's anybody who's in that workplace. They have, and those general responsibilities, which are on that slide there, are basically about making sure that that site is as free as possible from hazards and that it is safe and as healthy as possible. So that means, first of all, anticipating hazards and eliminating them, or putting measures in place to deal with them, fixing them when they arise, making sure they don't do anything that creates a risk. And that's an interesting one when we come to talk about change management and mental health impacts. And the important ones that we don't see happening at the moment in the COVID context is consultation with you before major decisions are made that could impact on your health and safety. So clearly the return to campus decisions should have had extensive consultation with individual workers and also with health and safety reps before they were made. and they need to facilitate you being represented. So that gets back to them maintaining those work health and safety structures. So you have some responsibilities too, and once you take up the role of HSR, it is your responsibility to represent people in your area on anything related to health and safety. And it is your responsibility to respond when issues are raised by workers in your work group. You've got a responsibility to consult with them about what's the best solution to issues. This is why, one of the reasons why this is such a powerful role, it's because it almost forces a collective response to an issue. So if there's an issue raised, as the HSR, you go and consult with the affected workers and you work together on the solution that you take to management. And you have a responsibility once things are raised with you to bring health and safety issues to the attention of management. Now that may be by forwarding an issue that's been sent to you by a worker in the workplace, or it might be with you anonymising that to say this is an issue that I've been informed about in that workplace. But those are your big responsibilities: represent, consult, and bring things to the attention of management. So when we're talking about what things are encompassed by health and safety, well, it's an incredibly broad list. Obviously, COVID at the moment and everything associated with the pandemic falls squarely into health and safety reps' responsibility. So your responsibility to monitor the health and safety of the workplaces that the people who are in your designated work group work in is really important during COVID. And then obviously physical, we'll just call them the big two groups: physical hazards, holes in the ground, bare wires, construction hazards around your area, psychological hazards. So we're talking about the things that can impact on employees' mental health. And there's a whole presentation that we do on psychological hazards and mental health. And so if anybody's interested in us running one of those in the near future, I'd be happy to do that, because there's a whole lot of new processes and things around that that are really useful. So I've put change management on there because we believe that along with excessive work are two of the most severe triggers for mental health impacts on staff. So basically, anything that might affect the health and safety of your colleagues or anybody else in the area. So it's a very broad remit. I often have people say to me, I'm already a HSR, and I say, great, that's fantastic, because I'm always happy if people have volunteered to be a HSR. And then I say, have you done the 5 days training and were you elected? And if the answer is no, then they're not a health and safety rep. They're likely to be a health and safety officer. And there's a really, really big difference, and you need to make sure you've got that right. If you're a health and safety officer because it's part of your work, then you're not necessarily a HSR. If you're someone who's sitting on a local safety committee, that doesn't make you a health and safety rep. So don't assume because someone's sitting on a health and safety committee that they necessarily are a HSR, because the fundamental difference is in their focus and the rigor with which they've got to that position. So HSRs elected, they have powers, and they're trained. Health and safety officers are appointed by management and have no power and no capacity to force change by management. So just make sure that you understand the distinction. Lots of people think their local safety officer is their HSR, but on many occasions they're not, and they don't have the powers that we need in order to enforce the work health and safety laws. So if you're thinking about becoming a HSR, or you just want to know who your HSR represents, you represent what's called a designated work group. And that's basically a grouping of workers that's determined by the employees and the management. And it can be arranged any way you like. It can be building, it can be floor of a building, it can be by faculty or school or work unit, or it can be by work type. What we have in most universities is a structure that's been imposed by management in which there's been no engagement with employees. So you need to have a look at your designated work group, because any employee can trigger the development of a new one. So if you're looking, if you go and look at your designated work group and you see it's enormous and it would be very difficult for one individual to cover it, then you can trigger the development of a new designated work group. As with all things in the union, though, we suggest it's a good idea to get a few of you together to do that, to say we want a work group that covers this area, and get in touch with us and we can help you to do that. It is in the interests of university managers to have as few health and safety reps as possible, for the pretty obvious reasons. So, and there are some extreme examples of that. I've been working with the ACU branch over the last week or so ago, because we've referred ACU to the regulators in 4 different states for what we consider to be breaches of a couple of parts of the Work Health and Safety Act. And they have 4 campuses. They have campuses, across 4 states, and they only have 5 health and safety reps. Perhaps a more extreme example, a friend of mine in the finance sector union was relaying to me that National Australia Bank had determined that a designated work group would be all their branch staff, so anybody working in a NAB branch anywhere in WA, South Australia and Northern Territory. Clearly one person can't represent all those. They can't do a safety walk. They can't get to actually see the problems of the employees. So it's important that designated work groups are big enough so that we don't have a lot of them vacant, because if they're vacant, then those employees don't have a health and safety rep, but also small enough that they're manageable. So there's a bit of a balancing act on that. But if you think you need a new designated work group, or you want to make one so that you can become a HSR, then talk to us and talk to your local branch in particular, and we can help you do that, because getting that right makes a real difference on how effective health and safety reps can be. So just some simple basics. Who gets to choose who HSRs are? The employees do. Management doesn't get to choose who health and safety reps are. They can choose all the health and safety officers they want, but employees are the ones who choose the HSR, and that's by a nomination process and then an election if that nomination is contested or there's more than 2 people, more than one person who wants to undertake the role. Sometimes we get management saying to people that they can't be a HSR because of the particular role they undertake. That's absolute bollocks. Anybody can be a HSR. All you have to be is an employee of what's known as the person conducting the business or undertaking, or the PCBU. So those casuals in particular have been told that casuals can't be a health and safety rep. Do not accept that. You are entitled to be a health and safety rep if you're elected by your work group. You get 5 days of training and follow-up training every year, and your term is 3 years. The other thing we're often asked is, can we have a couple of us be HSRs for our designated work group? And the answer is that by the legislation, you can have 1 HSR and 1 deputy. And it's a really good idea, if you're thinking of becoming a HSR, maybe get together with someone else to nominate for deputy. Then you can share the job, work together, and when the HSR is away, the deputy can take over. If you're in a group now that has a HSR, consider nominating to be a deputy as the first step on the process to becoming a health and safety rep. So what else do you need to know? First of all, we do sessions like this and we provide training and support to HSRs around the country. But I think the most important thing out of this is that it's not inherently or by design a role that is adversarial. It's not designed to be adversarial. It's designed to be constructive, to work with the workers in your work group and with management to resolve issues. So it's far less adversarial than perhaps it might be if you were on a bargaining team or you were a delegate. It's designed to be a constructive role, and it only becomes adversarial when the employer is clearly is not complying with their obligations under the Work Health and Safety Act. So a lot of people are put off by the thought, I have to fight with management all the time. You don't have to fight with management. It's a constructive process. It's not meant to be adversarial. Having done it myself for a while, once back in the dim dark ages, it was one of the most rewarding and fulfilling things that I could do, because when you're fixing health and safety problems for people, you're fixing problems that are incredibly important to them and have impact beyond their working role, particularly if you're talking about things that have mental health illness, mental health consequences. Those things can impact way beyond their working life into their family relationships and other things. So as a health and safety rep, you're solving problems that people really need help with and that are really vital to them as an individual. So it's a really rewarding role. So there's some things I'd like you to do today. If you're not yet a member, join. Okay, it's really important that you join. So the join link is there, nteu.org.au/join. When you jump off this session, check what your designated work group is and whether there is a HSR representing you. Okay, contact your local branch if you're concerned about your designated work group or there isn't a HSR, or just to register your interest in this topic, and they'll keep contacting you and providing you with information and updates. So make sure that you do that. If there is a HSR in representing you and the designated work group looks about right, then reach out to them and offer your support. It's good for them to know that they have support of the people in the work group. Set up a working, talking relationship with them. And finally, and it might not seem like it's linked, but it is inherently linked, is get involved in the bargaining campaign at your local branch, whether it's already started or it's about to start, because what we've seen, what COVID has shown us, is that there are many decisions made in universities without any regard for the health and safety of their employees and without any regard for their obligations under the Work Health and Safety Acts. If you're a member, you might have got a link to Sentry, our e-newsletter today, in which I say that most universities have either been completely ignorant of their responsibilities around work health and safety on COVID, or have chosen to ignore their responsibilities. Either way, it's a damning indictment on them. So in the bargaining campaign, we have a number of issues that go straight to the issues that have come out of COVID, but are also about embedding in another place work health and safety rights for employees. So, for example, the right to disconnect, particularly important for academic staff and academic casuals, but also for professional staff. The right not to have to respond, and there be no expectation that you respond to communications from management or from students on weekends and at nights and other times. It'd be the biggest mental health saviour for many university workers if that was achieved through bargaining. Better rights to work from home for professional staff, particularly where there's a reason why you need to work from home and why it will be beneficial to your health and welfare to work from home. So that's another campaign. For our transgender members, gender affirmation leave is really important to them. And again, that's embedded in work health and safety concerns, but also things around limiting workload, limiting the number of change managements you can be exposed to. All of those things in the bargaining campaign are about making work better, which makes your lives better and makes your work healthy, more healthy and safer than it is now. So don't look at WHS as being separate to bargaining, because it's really not. So try and get involved in your bargaining campaign and to support those claims that really go to people's health and safety. So if you need to contact anybody about this, you can contact your local branch. If you're a member, you probably know where they are. If you're not, you'll find them at nteu.org.au. If you have a query about any of these materials or anything else about work health and safety, you can send it to the designated whs@nteu.org.au, where you'll get a response from me or Campbell or someone who's got experience in WHS. Or if you want to ask me questions or ask for advice, then I'm more than happy to take them. That's my email address there, ggooding@nteu.org.au. and my phone number there too, particularly if you've got an urgent issue around health and safety. So that's the limit of my presentation, which is about the right time, I think. I have not been able to monitor the chat, so what I'm going to do is stop sharing and ask Campbell if there's any sort of thread there or issues that he thinks I should talk about, and then I'll take questions with hands up. So,
thanks, Gabe. I think that something that's coming up a bit that you touched on in the presentation, but might be worth expanding on, is the difference between an HSR and an employer safety rep, or I think some of the terminology that is being used in the chat is an HSE partner.
Yep. Okay, so it's a really, really important distinction, and it goes to who you're responsible for and who you're representing in those roles. If you're a HSR, as I said, you've got the powers of the Act, you've had the training, and your responsibility is to your fellow workers in your designated work group. If you're a health and safety officer or a HSE partner, you don't have legislative powers, you don't have and you are reporting to management and you're representing management. However much that might be dressed up as something else, if it's part of your job, it's part of maintaining the management side of the work health and safety system. So they are really distinct roles, and not to say that a health and safety officer can't also have stood to be a health and safety rep, but in the majority of cases, it's really important that when we're talking about health and safety, we're talking about health and safety reps who have all those advantages of the training, the powers, the support, and the fact that their job is to represent the workers as opposed to anybody else. Are there any other questions, Cam, that you thought commonly came up?
I think it's related, but there's a few questions around concerns that people have that managers or supervisors are being appointed by management as, we're using the term HSR, but I think that they're likely not HSRs under the Act, and what to do in those circumstances.
Right, we should get in touch with your local branch who can investigate when nominations were called for and what process went through. Okay, so it may be that nominations were called for and nobody noticed and a manager or supervisor stepped in. But if there hasn't been a process whereby nominations were called for and there was an election, then they're not a health and safety rep, and that can be then redone and somebody else can nominate. You've really got to watch these things. We're looking at a website, Cam and I were looking at a website the other day which listed HSRs that had been nominated and elected, but their term of office was a year beyond their term. So in effect, they'd have to be elected in a year's time to meet that term of office. So you've got to be careful about those things and just to watch them. Natasha, you've got your hand up.
Hi, so the work group I'm in has a vacancy for our HSR, and we got told yesterday that if you're interested, that you needed to speak to your supervisor and sort of get permission. Well, that was the way it was implied, and I'm interested, but I'm worried that my supervisor is a director and might say, no, you don't have time, or you've got too many duties, I don't want you to do that.
Well, they might, but they don't have the power to do that or the right to do that. Okay, so the best way to deal with that is to get a couple of people in your group to trigger the election nomination process and just nominate and get elected, because you given the fact that you're busy, you've got work time to do your HSR stuff. So some tasks have to be taken off you in order to become the HSR.
Great,
so
thank you.
Don't worry about them. It's a pressure on people not to take up the role. And the other thing that puts a real damper on work health and safety is people closely associated with management. So people like an executive assistant to a PVC or something, that people don't tend to go to them for help. So for us, it's important that it's people who are genuinely representative of the work group. So let us know how you go on. And if you want further help, then just email me and we can have a chat about it.
Thank you.
Kim.
Hello, thank you. Look, I've just sort of done a quick googly thing of current Deakin HSRs, and the most recent information I could find was 2019. So if it turns out that there's no current HSR in my designated work group, how do we trigger the election? Like, how do you go about trying to fill vacancies?
You just write to management and say you want the vacancy, the process started to fill the vacancy. Like I said before, with everything union, it's better to do it collectively, and it's probably worth working with your local branch, because there will be other designated work groups that are in the same position.
So when you say management, do you mean big management or local designated work group
whoever's
management?
in charge of work health and safety at your campus.
It's
not in your normal management line at all. It's none of their business.
So campus-based?
Yeah, whoever's in charge of work health and safety for the university, for Deakin.
So they should be able to give me a list. If I contact them, they should be able to give me a list of current workplace health and safety reps anyway, shouldn't they?
But they are supposed to be able to have that information available for workers, so you should be able to find that
easily.
Internet or intranet.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Thanks.
No worries. Nectarios, I hope I got that close to right.
Yes, perfect.
Oh, lovely. Oh, good.
Yeah.
I'll retire now. That's great.
Thanks for the presentation. I have been approached by colleagues in my area, in my school, to nominate for a HSR. I'm an academic in occupational health and safety, so I have a very good knowledge, on this area. But I have a few concerns. First of all, you talked about workload relief. So you need to, is this something foreseen in our enterprise agreement, or will this be included in the next round of that? Or how do you negotiate that? It's my first question. And because I'm a bit afraid, if I say I need 0.1 or 2, my HSR role, responsibilities, then I will have either to reduce my research or my teaching or whatever, meaning that I would probably have my academic career.
Yeah.
So what is, the advice?
So first of all, it should be included or can be included in your service component of your workload. So, I mean, for me, I'm not an academic, but I would try and corral it into that component. Have you got any?
I have it fully booked, my 0.2 engagement in leadership, the service component. And I know that I would like to help people and myself, of course, but even saying that I will let some duties, some responsibilities for my service component, let go, this would harm me in 5 or 10 years from now. Because you understand from an academic perspective, if you want to get a promotion or you want to move somewhere else, they will not appreciate that you were a HSR.
No, they won't. So, look, it is a difficult balancing act for academics, but I think it's really important that we do have some academic HSRs because coming from a professional staff background, and I hate saying this, and all the professional staff on here will grind their teeth, you get listened to more than professional staff when you're in a group, like a work health and safety committee, particularly if you've got expertise. And in part, it's going to depend on the what your local management's like and how much you think you're going to need to spend on the role. You definitely have to get the 5 days of training carved out. And it might only be 1 day a month that you actually end up spending, depending on how much you want to do in the role.
Yeah, but is this enough? I mean, if somebody wants to take seriously the responsibilities of a HSR, I don't think we can expect just a day a month. I mean, we're talking about 100 employees only in our school.
Yeah.
We're talking about activities taking place in campus and outside campus. I don't think would be realistic. So that's, I mean, and I'm not alone. I know other experts, academic experts, would like to help, but yeah, we have this hesitation, I would say, how this could fit the rest of the expectations. The HSR training, is it offered after you are elected?
Yes.
After you are elected, okay. And
you can't fulfill the role until you've done the training, like you can't issue a PIN until you've been trained.
Yeah, and what about material costs? Let's say if you want to do investigation, sometimes you need some equipment to measure. You could need to travel somewhere else because workplace activities are not restricted on campus. How are those covered and by whom?
Equipment
traveling costs, things like that.
They're all there. If you have to travel to investigate a work health and safety issue, then that's covered. Cam, you had your hand up. Did you want to add something to this?
I was just going to respond to the first point or the first question that you made, Nectarios, in relation to the carve out of service or the sort of prejudice that you might suffer to your service allocation in your workload. And I don't think there's a good reason why it has to come exclusively out of service. I think there would be a good argument to say that it should come evenly out of, service teaching and research, if that was more, if that worked better for you, because if I think it's right, as you say, that if a lot of your time in your service allocation was taken up with performing the functions of the HSR role, and that meant that you couldn't participate in committees and things like that you would use to make an application for promotion, you're right to say that your career prospects would be harmed, and that is illegal under the Act. So I think we would be able to mount a good argument to say that, you need to have things taken out of, your teaching allocation reduced as well as any other sort of service allocation.
Well, yeah, in theory sounds good, but have we tested that in practice is the question. I understand, I don't say no, I wouldn't deny, but maybe, we have a very specific, so indeed, I don't say somebody would accuse me of becoming a HSR, but if I don't produce the number of articles I should do, or teach in the units I'm expected to, and gain this teaching experience, and contribute to curriculum development and the like, then this is what is in our framework to get promotion, or even the annual performance framework. There is nothing there that says, if you are a HSR, you need to produce fewer papers, or you need to teach fewer students, or mark fewer assignments. So it's not an easy equation to solve. I understand. I will think about it. Yeah.
Perhaps the best thing to do though is to get our industrial officer who deals with QUT, who'll be more familiar with the workload models there, to contact you and have a chat with you about how you could do it. It does vary a lot between universities and between faculties and schools.
That's me actually, Nectarios. So I'm happy to speak with you after the meeting at some point.
Fantastic.
I'll send you through my phone number now.
Okay, thank you, Anthony.
Fantastic. Julie Fletcher. You're on mute, Julie.
Hi, sorry, thank you. Thanks very much for the session and for the opportunity to ask a question. I have a couple of questions. The first one is regarding the number of HSRs per designated work group. We're currently going through the process in my college of dividing the college up into a number of designated work groups. And we're in the consultation phase. And at the moment we have proposed, we're dividing the college up on a campus basis, and we've proposed 2 HSRs for one of the designated work groups. But you're saying today that that's not possible. We can only have one?
Where are you?
Vic Uni.
Okay. Cam, do you know what the situation is with the Vic Act?
Sorry, Gabe, I was just looking at the chat on the side. Can you repeat the question for me, please, Julie?
Yeah, sure. So I'm from first year college at Victoria University. We're currently going through the process of breaking up the college into a number of designated work groups. And we're in the consultation phase, and our proposal at the moment is for one HSR and one deputy for each designated work group, except for the largest one where we have proposed 2 HSRs plus a deputy. I don't know whether we'll get people nominating for 2 positions, but that's what we've proposed. Is that we have spoken to WorkSafe and we've spoken to our NTEU branch people. Is that okay to propose 2 HSRs for 1 designated work group?
Without having looked into it specifically for that question, my understanding is that the answer is no. The idea is that for each work group, there's supposed to be 1 HSR and 1 deputy HSR, and it's only if one of those positions is vacant that you can have an election for another one. But I don't think there is provision under the Act for 3 HSRs or 2 HSRs and 1 deputy
and a
HSR
deputy. So currently, as it appears on our intranet, it currently appears that we are a single designated work group for the whole college. We have 1 HSR and 1 listed vacancy, which is the vacancy has been there since 2019.
Okay, so but you've started the process to work towards getting more designated work groups.
Yeah.
If your big one requires 2 HSRs, then probably the thing to do is to break it into 2.
Split it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
By function or physical location or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So my second question was regarding the training. We're about to commence teaching, as everybody is, and so I was wondering whether, rather than take 5 days out of teaching, is there any of the training available online?
Cam, do you know the answer to that in Victoria?
I'm not sure, but my guess would be that, given that a lot of things are online these days, I think the sort of chief provider that we would recommend in Victoria is run out of the Victorian Trades Hall Council. I would recommend speaking to them, or I can get in touch with them too to have a look at what sort of training programs they provide and how flexible they're able to be. But I know that when I have done training through the ACTU, they're quite good in allowing you to chop and, if you show up on the first day with one group and they might be doing, a 5-day course. If you can't do that, you might be able to show up on a Tuesday for the next group that's coming through or something like that. The important part is that you're there for all of the content. I don't think it's, I think they're willing to be a bit flexible in that regard.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Okay. We've got any more questions from the floor? Anybody else want to ask a question? No? Okay, well, we will post the slides onto nteu.org.au/WHS and probably the recording as well. And thank you everybody for coming and for showing an interest and for thinking about taking up these roles, as I said, both incredibly rewarding and incredibly important. And let us know either direct to me or through that email, whs@nteu, if you'd like us to run a session on hazards to mental health in higher ed and how we should be dealing with them, because we can do that as well. Okay, thank you everybody. Have a great weekend.